Thanks again for dropping by. I'm Tony Altieri, Vice President of Business Development at National Powersports Auctions. So you can probably already tell this isn't our usual weekly recap. We didn't have any auctions last week, so instead we're bringing you an interview with Jeremy Janson from Wells Fargo Commercial Distribution Finance. Jeremy talks about the impacts of COVID-19 not only on their business but our industry, both short-term and long-term. So we hope you enjoy it. And if you have any comments or questions, please click, comment, and connect with us through the various information listed on your screen. And we'll be back here next week for another update. Cheers. Well, Jeremy, thanks again for jumping on with us, man. We know it was short notice, and we appreciate you carving out some time for us. If you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit about who CDF is and kind of your role in powersports.
Yeah, Wells Fargo CDF has been providing wholesale financing or inventory financing for the powersports industry for well over 40 years. Have the privilege to work with some of the best manufacturers on the planet and roughly 6,000 dealers across North America. So just again, providing the financing to keep the inventory rolling through the dealerships and into the end consumer.
We've been partners for a long time with Wells CDF, and we appreciate the relationship. I'm curious, over the last 60 days, a lot's happened. Kind of the lockdowns went into effect in kind of mid-March. How has that impacted CDF, your customers, whether it's dealers or OEMs?
Yeah, I think, Tony, the one word that comes to mind is surprising. Two words, maybe incredibly surprising. The cadence of payoffs, retail, liquidations that we're seeing on our portfolio has just been unbelievable. For the month of May, all 50 states reported positive liquidations across our book of business. And if you aggregate April and May together, 44 out of 50 states showed positive liquidations. So it's just been incredibly surprising the amount of powersports product that is retailing right now. Yeah,
it's a headwind that we've seen, or I should say a tailwind that we've seen as well, where dealers are reporting to us they need inventory bad. So I'm sure that coincides a little bit with what you're seeing on the liquidation side in terms of the health of the overall flooring lines. Could you speak a little bit more about maybe some interesting data or trends that you're seeing, and whether you think those trends are long-term, short-term, or a little bit of a mix of both?
Yeah, sure. And at CDF, we finance many different types of recreational products: RV, marine, power sports, which, the business that we're talking about today, lawn and garden product. And the power sports industry from a retail perspective is significantly outpacing the other industries that we finance. In April, it was very much a southeastern U.S. Growth. But now, as we've been through May, we can see retail growth occurring everywhere across the country. Aging in our portfolio, so equipment that is on the floor over 360 days old, is at one of the lowest points it has ever been in the business. So the health of the dealer, the health of the inventory on the balance sheet of the dealer really is at a good point right now. And I think also want to give credit to the motorsports vendors. The manufacturers stepped up during this time and provided a lot of free floor plan assistance to their dealers, deferrals to their dealers. So we're just incredibly hopeful that the dealers are gonna come through this in pretty good shape.
It's interesting. It feels like as an industry, we've got quite a bit of momentum, which is something I don't think when this whole thing began that we would have said, hey, coming out of this, we're going to be in great shape. But we're positioned really, really well as an industry. From your perspective, where do you think kind of the short term as we go into Q3, Q4 of this year, how do you guys see things playing out?
Yeah, certainly the strength for the last 8 to 9 weeks, most of the strength has been in the off-road sector. Dirt bikes, enduro bikes, ATVs, side-by-side, both recreational, sport. So there's clearly strength there. In the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks on road, we've seen that really make a strong push from a liquidation standpoint. I think that longer term, more people are coming into the sport. The dealers that we speak to, the vendors that we speak to, the conversations are centering around why is this happening and what is the long-term implication of this to power sports. And the why it's happening is, right now, stick and ball type sports are on hold. People aren't traveling. They're not flying. We're home more, so we have more time to run down to the dealership and buy that piece of power sports equipment. And people are realizing how much fun power sports really can be, and you can do it with your family, right? It's absolutely you and your kids that you can do. So I think it's an old form of recreation that's finding its way to new people, which is spectacular, and that's where I see the long-term benefit coming in. I'm optimistic that we start to get back to normal as the year progresses, which net for the full year will be a really good story. April and May retail, April and May liquidations have been just excessively strong. And I think as the year rolls on and we get back to a normal level, maybe a little bit of upside on power sports, it'll go in the books as a terrific year.
For the most part, we're seeing a lot of the same types of things, that momentum that's really carried us through. The one thing that I think is concerning for everyone is just making sure the dealers have the inventory that they need to meet the demand from a retail perspective. I'm curious, Wells is a massive entity globally in the financial sector. I'm curious, what are the big macro things that you guys are looking at, the things that you kind of keep your finger on the pulse of, that others in the power sports space should pay attention to? We've got some big things happening economically. We've got an election on the horizon this year. We don't know how this is going to play out from an infection standpoint later on. What are you guys kind of targeting to as we look kind of down the road?
Yeah, great question. So pre-COVID, post-COVID, the things that we absolutely pay attention to on a weekly and monthly basis are things like consumer sentiment, unemployment rates, small business optimism. How is the manufacturing sector performing in North America? How are oil prices doing in North America? New home sales. Those are very trackable macroeconomic data points that we look to try and help us gauge where the power sports market is going. Certainly COVID Black Swan event caught everybody by surprise, and all of those key metrics are underperforming right now, yet our business is wildly overperforming. So we may have to rethink some of those metrics that we look at, but those are the things, Tony, when we start to get back to whatever a new normal is, that we will continue to focus on, because we know that in aggregate, there is some correlation there between those 6 or 7 data points and performance of the industry overall.
Even terrible things that can happen, and obviously this is a terrible thing that's affected people globally. There's always good that comes from it, right? Changes are made within an industry. Focuses are shifted. I'm curious, what do you think is a good thing that's going to impact our industry that comes out of this potentially long-term for us?
Yeah, as we talked about it just moments before, new people are coming into the sport. Families are seeing that they can use power sports to recreate together. Not every child makes it all the way to their high school team on the traditional sports of baseball and football, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, etc. They, I hope, will now come in to power sports. So I do believe that long term, more people are coming into the sport now, more people are going to stick with it, and it's going to be great for the industry over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
You guys have been in a relationship with NPA for a long time, and to provide an invaluable service, not only to us, but to the industry. And I just want to thank you for being our first guest in our interview series. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off for today?
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for inviting me to be the first guest. We've had a very long relationship and fruitful relationship with NPA. Just appreciate everything that you guys do for the industry. And thanks again for having me today. It's a really exciting time right now in power sports.